Chapter 25 of The Trail of the Lonesome Pine. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Mike Vendetti, MikeVendetti.com. The Trail of the Lonesome Pine by John Fox, Jr. Chapter 25. Thus fate did not wait until election day for the thing Hale most dreaded, the clash that would involve the Guard in the Tolliver Falin troubles over the hills. There had been simply a preliminary political gathering at the Gap the day before, but it had been a crucial day for the Guard, from a cloudy sunrise to a tragic sunset. Early that morning Mockaby, the town sergeant, had stepped into the street freshly shaven, with polished boots and his best clothes for the eyes of his sweetheart, who was to come up that day to the Gap from Lee. Before sunset he died with those boots on, while the sweetheart, unknowing, was bound on her happy way homeward, and Rufe Tolliver, who had shot Mockaby, was clattering through the Gap in flight for Lonesome Cove. As far as anybody knew, there had been but one Tolliver and one Falin in town that day, though many had noticed the tall, western-looking stranger who early in the afternoon had ridden across the bridge over the North Fork. But he was quiet and well behaved. He merged into the crowd, and through the rest of the afternoon was in no way conspicuous. Even when the one Tolliver and the one Falin got into a fight in front of the spieler stand, and the riot started, which came near ending in a bloody battle, the Falin was clearly blameless and was let go at once. This angered the many friends of the Tolliver, and when he was arrested, there was an attempt at rescue, and the Tolliver was dragged to the calaboose behind a slowly retiring line of policemen, who were jabbing the rescuers back with the muzzles of their cocked Winchesters. It was just when it was all over and the Tolliver was safely jailed that Bad Rufe galloped up to the calaboose, shaking with rage, for he had just learned that the prisoner was a Tolliver. He saw how useless interference was, but he swung from his horse, threw the reins over its head after the Western fashion, and strode up to Hale. "You the captain of this guard?" "Yes," said Hale. "And you?" Rufe shook his head with angry impatience, and Hale, thinking he had some communication to make, ignored his refusal to answer. "I hear that a fellow can't blow a whistle or holler or shoot off his pistol in this town without getting arrested." "That's true. Why?" Rufe's black eyes gleamed vindictively. "Nothin'," he said, and he turned to his horse. 10 minutes later, as Mockaby was passing down the dummy track, a whistle was blown on the river bank, a high yell was raised, a pistol shot quickly followed, and he started for the sound of them on a run. A few minutes later 3 more pistol shots rang out, and Hale rushed to the river bank to find Mockaby stretched out on the ground, dying, and a mountaineer lout pointing after a man on horseback, who was making at a swift gallop for the mouth of the Gap and the hills. "He done it," said the lout in a frightened way, "but I don't know who he was." Within half an hour 10 horsemen were clattering after a murderer, headed by Hale, Logan, and the infant of the Guard. Where the road forked, a woman with a child in her arms said she had seen a tall, black-eyed man with a black mustache gallop up the right fork. She no more knew who he was than any of the pursuers. 3 miles up that fork they came upon a red-headed man leading his horse from a mountaineer's yard. "He went up the mountain," the red-haired man said, pointing to the trail of the Lonesome Pine. "He's gone over the line. What's he done? Killed somebody?" "Yes," said Hale shortly, starting up his horse. I wish I'd 'a' knowed you was after him. I'm sheriff over thar." Now they were without warrant or requisition, and Hale, pulling in, said sharply, "We want that fellow. He killed a man at the Gap. If we catch him over the line, we want you to hold him for us. Come along." The red-headed sheriff sprang on his horse and grinned eagerly. "I'm your man." "Who was that fellow?" asked Hale as they galloped. The sheriff denied knowledge with a shake of his head. "What's your name?" The sheriff looked sharply at him for the effect of his answer. "Jim Falin." And Hale looked sharply back at him. He was one of the Falins who long ago had gone to the Gap for young Dave Tolliver, and now the Falin grinned at Hale. "I know you, all right." No wonder the Falin chuckled at his heaven-born chance to get a Tolliver into trouble. At the Lonesome Pine the traces of the fugitive's horse swerved along the mountain top. the shoe of the right forefoot being broken in half. The swerve was a blind, and the sheriff knew it, but he knew where Rufe Tolliver would go, and that there would be plenty of time to get him. Moreover, he had a purpose of his own, and a secret fear that it might be thwarted. So without a word he followed the trail till darkness hid it, and they had to wait until the moon rose. Then as they started again, the sheriff said, "Wait a minute," and plunged down the mountain side on foot. A few minutes later he hallooed for Hale, and down there showed him the tracks doubling backward along a footpath. "Regular rabbit, ain't he?" chuckled the sheriff, and back they went to the trail again, on which, 200 yards below the Pine, they saw the tracks pointing again to Lonesome Cove. On down the trail they went, and at the top of the spur that overlooked Lonesome Cove, the Falin sheriff pulled in suddenly and got off his horse. There the tracks swerved again into the bushes. "He's goin' to wait till daylight for fear somebody's follered him. He'll come back, old Devil Judd's." "How do you know he's going to Devil Judd's?" asked Hale. "Where else would he go?" asked the Falin, with a sweep of his arm toward the moonlit wilderness. "There ain't but one house that way for 10 miles. Nobody lives thar." "How do you know that he's going to any house?" asked Hale impatiently. "He may be getting out of the mountains." "Do you ever know a feller to leave these mountains just because he killed a man? How'd you follow him at night? How'd you ever catch him with his start? What'd he turn that way for, if he wasn't going to Judd's? Why don't he keep on down the river? If he's gone, he's gone. If he ain't, he'll be at Devil Judd's at daybreak, if he ain't there now." "What do you want to do?" "Go on down with the hosses, hide 'em in the bushes, and wait." "Maybe he's already heard us coming down the mountain." "That's the only thing I'm afeared of," said the Falin calmly. "But what I'm tellin' you is your only chance." "How do you know he won't hear us going down? Why not leave the horses?" "We might need the horses, and it's mud and sand all the way. You ought to know that." Hale did know that. So on they went quietly, and hid their horses aside from the road near the place where Hale had fished when he first went to Lonesome Cove. There the Falin disappeared on foot. "Do you trust him?" asked Hale, turning to Bud, and Bud laughed. "I reckon you can trust a Falin against a friend of a Tolliver, or the other way round any time." Within half an hour the Falin came back with the news that there was no sign that the fugitive had come in. "No use surrounding the house now," he said. "He might see one of us first when he comes in and get away. We'll do that after daylight." And at daylight they saw the fugitive ride out of the woods at the back of the house and boldly around to the front of the house, where he left his horse in the yard and disappeared. "Now send 3 men to catch him if he runs out the back way, quick," said the Falin. "It'll take 'em 20 minutes to get thar through the woods. Soon as they get there, let one of 'em shoot off his pistol, and that'll be the signal for us." The 3 men started swiftly, but the pistol shot came before they had gone 100 yards. For one of the 3, a new man and unaccustomed to the use of firearms, stumbled over a root while he was seeing that his pistol was in order, and let it go off accidentally. "No time to waste now," the Falin called sharply. "Get on your horses and get." Then the rush was made, and when they gave up the chase at noon that day, the sheriff looked Hale squarely in the eye when Hale sharply asked him a question. "Why didn't you tell me who that man was?" "Because I feared you wouldn't go to Devil Judd's after him. I know better now." And he shook his head, for he did not understand. And so Hale, at the head of the disappointed guard, went back to the Gap. And when next day they laid Maccabee away in the thinly populated little graveyard that rested in the hollow of the river's arm, the spirit of law and order in the heart of every guard gave way to the spirit of revenge, and the grass would grow under the feet of none until Rufe Tolliver was caught and the death debt of law was paid with death. That purpose was no less firm in the heart of Hale, and he turned away from the grave, sick with the trick that fate had lost no time in playing on him. For he was a Falin now in the eyes of both factions, and an enemy even to June. The weeks dragged slowly along, and June sank slowly toward the depths with every fresh realization of the trap of circumstances into which she had fallen. She had dim memories of just such a state of affairs when she was a child.